All right, here's the next video, and this video is designed to help students that are starting to deal with some equations that have percents in them, and probably specifically where they're given a sentence or a question, and that question a word problem that involves a percent. As an example, if I jump down here, it might be a problem like 45% of some number is 54, and you're asked to find that missing number that's right there. And so that's what this video is designed to look at. Before we do that, I want to just give you a little bit of a thought about what equations are and how we go about this. So if I write 2 times 3 equals 6, I hope everyone agrees with that statement. And we have right here an equation. If you notice, the sides look different. If you look at the left side, you look at the right side, those two things definitely look different, but the equal sign means that they're the same. Even though they look different, they're the same. I used to, when I taught Algebra 1 a lot, I used to give an example of a teeter-totter. And a teeter-totter is the old playground equipment where if someone sat on one side and someone sat on the other side, it would go down and then it would back and forth based on the weight, and students could push off with their feet, go up and down. I always told students this though, that if we had a student on one side and we had 2 students on the other side, if this student weighed 100 pounds and these two each weighed 50, the weight on both sides is the same. Now I understand we have to get into the physics part and how far are we away from the center of the fulcrum here, but let's just focus on the number. That if we have 100 pounds on this side, we have 100 pounds on that side, assuming that that weight is the same distance away from the center, that teeter-totter should balance. It should sit still. It shouldn't go down one way or down up the other way. It should balance. Even though the sides look different, the fact that we have 2 people over here versus 1 person right here, that teeter-totter balances. And a teeter-totter is much like an equation that, in that even though the sides look different, we're told that they are the same. So what I'd like to take is, let's go back up to that 2 times 3 equals 6. And what if the problem had been presented to us and said, well, we're not sure what one of the numbers is, so I'm just going to leave a little empty rectangle here. Some number times 3 is 6. How would you go about figuring out that number? Now, someone might say to me, well, I know that 2 times 3 is 6, so that plugs it in. But I would ask you, what operation would you use? And I hope you would look at this and you would say, well, I'm going to take this number on the other side, 6, and I'm going to divide by 3, and I would come up with 2, which ends up being my number that fills in right here. We did a couple of things that are very important. First of all, the order that we divide matters. We started with the number on this side and said, we're going to take this number, we're going to divide by this. We use division because division is the opposite operation, or it's the inverse operation. I like to use the word opposite because I think students understand that a little better. But we're going to use the opposite operation, and we will take 6, and instead of multiplying, we will divide. And that helps us figure out the unknown answer, which in this case turned out to be 2. Well, if that's the case, we're going to look at something like this. So let's say we had the word problem, 18% of 60 is what number? Well, first of all, here's a little bit about translating that to symbolism. We'll start with the 18%. Hopefully everyone's aware that 18% is going to be the decimal number 0.18. When we get to the word of in mathematics means times, so I'll try to put a big dot there to indicate the time sign. We'll go to the number 60. That's going to go right here. We get to the word is in mathematics means equals. And now we have what number, which we don't know. And that's kind of like that box that we used in the previous one. You could put that, you could put a question mark. Later when you get to algebra, you'll start using variables because they stand for things that you don't know. But we'll just use that for this standpoint. If I look at this one, it says right here that this rectangle is equal to 60 times 0.18. That looks to me like I simply have to grab my calculator and I simply am going to have to type in 60 times 0.18, and it turns out to be 10.8. I hope that makes sense, that 18%, which is kind of a small percent, 18% of 60 is going to be the number 10.8, which is the number then that would go in right there, or it becomes the answer to our problem. So there's the first type of percentage problem. We'll go to the next one. This is where it gets to be a little bit, we'll say maybe a little bit more difficult. 45%, I will write as 0.45. Again, remember, of means multiplication. Some number I don't know, so I'm going to put an empty box there. Is means equals, and then I will put the number 54. So at this point, I look at this and I hope when you look at this that this is very similar to this problem right here. We have an empty rectangle times 3 equals 6. And remember, we ended up using opposite operations. We have something very similar, even though the order isn't the same. We have 0.45 times something is equal to 54. Remember, this is where we can use opposite operations. We need to take this number on the other side. We need to say 54. The opposite operation of multiply is divide, and we will divide by 0.45. So 54 divided by 0.45, and I believe that one turns out to be the number 120. So 120 would be the number that would actually go in right there. Hopefully that makes sense, because 45% of 120 is 54. 45% is a little less than 50%. It's a little less than half. So a little less than half of 120 is 54. Well, I know half of 120 is 60. A little less than half, 45%, makes sense to me that that answer would be a little less than 60, or in this case, 54. But again, it was all about saying that I was going to take 54, I was going to use the opposite operation of multiplication, so I divided by that number exactly, which was 0.45. The last problem I have is now says what percent, and again, because I don't know that, that's going to be my empty box. Of, again, trying to get you guys to remember that of means multiply. 80 is, I guess I can circle that as well, is means equals in mathematics, and we have 30. I believe this problem is almost identical to the problem we have here. Something times 3 is 6. We took, if you remember, we took the number that was by itself divided by the other number that's there. So if we look at this one, instead of it being times 3 is 6, remember we took 6 divided by 3. I show you this because the order, it needs to start with the 30. 30 divided by 80 should give us the answer, just like 6 divided by 3 gave us the answer to this problem. And in this case, when you divide them, 30 divided by 80 is 0.375, but we were asked about what percent, and hopefully we can convert a percent or a decimal to a percent by sliding it 2 spots to the right and saying that this would then be 37.5%. So if you look at the problems that we did in these last couple of examples, it's really about opposite operations. In this case, we ended up taking 30 divided by 80 to figure out our unknown number. In the problem up here, we ended up taking 54 divided by our unknown number, or divided by 0.45, 54 divided by 0.45 to come up with our unknown number. Again, hopefully this helps you out. As always, ask someone sitting next to you, because sometimes your peers are the best people you have when it comes to learning. Thank you.